Okay. Hello, I'm Eric. I'm the seed specialist at Floret, and today Erin told me that she's been getting a lot of questions about how we do zinnia crossing, hand pollinations on the farm. So I'm going to show you how we go about doing it, because I just finished in this field doing around 750 of them, so it's fresh in my mind. I'm going to share it with you. The variety we're going to cross onto today is Bennery's Giant Lilac. And the first step that you need to do to cross onto a flower is you need to cover the heads. We use these organza bags. And what you want to do is cover the flower when it's in about this stage, before it opens up, before you can see these yellow threads. These are the stigmas. That's what you're going to put the pollen onto. If you can see that, even if it's just a tiny bit, it's too late. So you want to put a bag on when it's like this, well before it's opened up, and then wait for about a week. This bag was put on maybe 4 days ago, 3 or 4 days ago, and it's opened up nicely. So this is going to be our seed parent. We have plenty of stigmas to cross onto there. This is another one that I bagged earlier this week, but it's much younger, and you could cross onto this, but the drawback is that there's only one row. So right now, these crosses, you're only going to get one row of seeds, which is how many petals there are there. It's maybe 25 or so. On this one, you have multiple layers. There's a stigma at the base of each of these petals, and so that's how many seeds you're going to get, probably closer to 75 or upwards of that. So the next thing we need to do is go find our pollen parent. We're going to cross a variety called Unicorn Chris's Rainbow onto this today. So we'll walk over to the other side of the patch here. And Unicorn Chris's Rainbow is another fully doubled unicorn selection, bright colors, ombre. But unfortunately, in the fully doubled flowers, there's no pollen production. And so we have to find the flowers in the patch that are not fully double. Some of these semi-doubles that have these bright yellow florets at the center. And this is where all of the pollen production is going to happen. So in order to get good pollen, a good pollen source, we need to bag the heads in the morning. So this one, these are the pollen florets, but there's not actually any pollen there because the bees already came in and they took it. So when we put an organza bag over the top of it, we're preventing the bees from coming and getting it, which also prevents any possible cross-pollination that the bees could have done. And so I bagged some heads this morning around 10 o'clock, and then they push out pollen around 11 or noon in our climate. And so I was able to cut these, which now have a lot of pollen right in the center of these little yellow florets. So I'm going to take this back over to our seed parent and we'll put this pollen onto the stigmas. I can introduce you a little bit to the tools that we use in doing this. I've already talked about the organza bags. These are really cheap to buy in bulk. They're great for any number of things in the garden, specifically with seeds, but for doing hand pollinations, they're great. You can cover the seed parents and cinch them down. You can hang a tag on so you know what your cross was, and it prevents insects from getting in there. I have 70% alcohol spray, so when I'm using tweezers or a paintbrush and going between different flower varieties, I can spray it down and the alcohol will kill the pollen, so I'm not inadvertently crossing two different varieties that I don't want to. I have my tweezers, and I've gone through a lot of different tweezers and come up with these as my absolute favorite. And they're reverse action tweezers, so they open when you squeeze them, and they have a really powerful spring, so I can open it, lock onto one of those bright yellow pollen florets, and it just pulls it right off, and then I don't have to do any squeezing to hold it while I'm doing the pollination. which is nice when you're doing 750 of them, your hands get tired. So this is just really nice, easy. It's also got a really sharp point, which is great for precision. Another thing that I found this year that I've used a little bit on other crops, not so much in zinnias, but these little pollination wands, it's kind of like a purple pipe cleaner. That might be exactly what it is actually, but the pollen shows up really well on this fuzzy purple. So you can dip into your pollen source and then just paint it onto the stigmas. But for zinnias, most of what I've been doing is just plucking the pollen florets off with these tweezers and then just holding that and painting that onto the stigmas. You can also use a paintbrush. What I like about using the tweezers is that it dumps a lot of pollen on, and so there's kind of no question if you're getting pollen on. When you pull it off, you can see the pollen just dump onto the petal, onto the stigma, and it's like an insurance policy. You know that you're doing it, you can see it. With a paintbrush, it's a little bit harder to see. It's also effective, so either way you want to do it. Snips to cut the pollen parents, and then these little tags. I like these plastic loop tags. You can write in Sharpie what your cross is. Here we're doing Bennery's Giant Lilac by Chris's Rainbow, and today the date. If you write in Sharpie on these, they're not going to come off. The plastic doesn't fall apart in the rain. It doesn't get eaten by rodents or whatever, bugs. So it's just a nice secure way to label what you're doing. So now you know what's in my toolkit here. We're going to go back to our seed parent that I showed you at the beginning, and we'll start doing some crosses. So I'm going to pull the bag off, lay it right here, kind of around the branch. That way if I turn around or bend down to do something, I know which flower it is, because once the bag is off, they all look exactly the same. So I'm going to pull off a pollen floret here. It's got a nice amount of pollen in the center. I'm just going to start painting onto these stigmas, and you can see the pollen falling onto the purple of the petal. The yellow pollen shows up really well. That's one of the reasons I like crossing onto these purple flowers, especially for demonstrating. It's really easy to see the pollen. Purple flowers are, I would say, a good beginner flower to cross onto because it's so visual. So I'm just working around, painting the pollen on with these pollen florets. And I'll go all the way around. Because this flower is at the perfect stage to do this, I have 2 or 3 layers of stigmas that I can do without having to peel back any petals to find them. So I've made it all the way around. All the way around on the top, and now I'll bend the petals back. The only ones I haven't gotten are this bottom row down here. So now I'll paint onto those bottom stigmas. Go all the way around. If you're using a paintbrush, it would be the exact same thing. You just dip your paintbrush into the pollen floret here and then paint it on almost all the way around here. Sometimes I like to go around twice just to be sure, but there's so much pollen coming out of this, going onto that. It's probably okay after one time around. I just can't help. Sometimes I go around twice. Then you want to take your organza bag, put it over, cinch it down so that no other bees can come cross onto it. If you didn't cover it, what would happen is you would have the lower levels, the lower 3 or 4 layers of petals would be seed that was from your cross, and then every day new petals open and new stigmas open on those petals, and bees could come in and cross onto that, either from this variety or from any other variety in this field. So you would have a mix of your cross and something else. So that's the reason to put the bag on. Then you know all the seed that comes in here is going to be from your cross, because these flowers don't pollinate themselves on the flower very well. That doesn't happen too often. So you know that all of the seeds on here are from your cross. So for the label, I wrote the seed parent first, followed by the pollen parent, and then the date. And in about a month, we could start looking at this to cut it. We'll want to cut it when the head dries down, turns brown, and the stem starts to dry down. If you wanted to check in a couple days to see, if you're really curious, like I always am, curious to see if your cross took, you can come and look at the stigmas that you crossed onto. In 1 to 2 days, they will shrivel up and turn dark brown, and just kind of disappear if the pollination was successful. And if it wasn't successful, they'll stay bright yellow, and you can just try the cross again. So with that, I think that's all you need to know to get out and do some crossing in your backyard. Grab your tweezers or your paintbrush, a bag to cover it, and 2 different zinnia varieties, and try making some crosses.